Hello. Life is full of choices, right? Some small, some big. But what if one step, just one, changed your destiny forever? Moses had a home, a family, a quiet life in Midian. Then one night, he saw a fire in the distance. Wait here, he told his wife. I'll check it out. Seemed simple enough, but that fire, it wasn't just fire. It was a call, a mission, a moment that flipped his entire world upside down. Moses had no idea what was about to happen. He had a family now, a new life in Midian. But one night, everything changed. A mysterious fire appeared in the distance. It flickered in the darkness, glowing against the cold desert air. Moses turned to his wife and said, "Wait here, I see something ahead. Maybe I'll find a directions or a bit of warmth." Step by step, he walked toward the strange fire. But what he found? It wasn't just a fire. It was something far greater. A moment that would change history forever. As Moses got closer, he saw a tree engulfed in flames. But here is the wild part. It wasn't burning up. Then, out of nowhere, a voice called out. A voice unlike any other. A divine call. فلما أتاها نودي يا موسى. When he came to it, he was called, "Oh Musa." Moses froze. His heart pounded. Who was speaking to him? And then the voice continued, "Inni ana Allah, la ilaha illa ana." Indeed, I am Allah. There is no God but me. Moses stood there, overwhelmed. His entire world shifted. This wasn't just a fire, it was a divine sign. Allah was speaking to him. And what come next? A command. Allah told Moses, "Throw your staff down." Moses obeyed. And the moment it hit the ground, it transformed. The wooden staff turned into a living, slithering snake. Not just any snake, a massive, terrifying serpent. Moses jumped back, shocked and scared. But then Allah told him, "Pick it up, don't be afraid." He reached out, touched it, and it turned back into a staff. Then Allah gave him another sign. "Put your hand inside your clock." Moses did. And when he pulled it out, it was shining, glowing white like pure light. These weren't just tricks, they were miracles. And Moses, he had just been chosen. Then came the command that it changed everything we knew. Go to Pharaoh. Wait, what? Go back to Egypt? Back to the man who wanted me dead? Moses hesitated. Pharaoh was powerful at that moment, ruthless, dangerous, and Moses, he had a speech difficulty. He worried, what if I can't speak clearly? So he prayed, وَاحْلُلْ عُقْدَةً مِّن لِسَانِي يَفْقَهُ قَوْلِي. Loosen the knot from my tongue so they understand my words. And then he made one more request. Can my brother Harun come with me? He speaks better than me. And Allah granted it. Moses wouldn't go alone. Harun would stand beside him. The mission was set. Return to Egypt, face the Pharaoh, free Bani Israel. Moses returned home, told Harun everything he knew. The fire, the voice, the miracles, the mission ahead. No more hiding, no more running. It was time to confront the Pharaoh. With their staffs in hand, they left Midian behind, walking back into the lion's den. The mission had begun, and history was about to be rewritten. Moses and Harun walked back into Egypt, back to the place Moses once called home. But this time, he wasn't a prince, a fugitive, or just a man. He was a messenger from Allah Azza wa Jal, carrying miracles, and his mission to face the world's most arrogant king and pharaoh, to demand the freedom of an entire nation. They stood before the massive golden gates. The guards stared, confused. Moses had been gone for years, but now, he wasn't hiding anymore. Moses and Harun were here to see the Pharaoh. The grand doors swung open, revealing Pharaoh's palace. Marble floors, gold-covered walls, pillars stretching to the sky, and at the center, Pharaoh sitting on his massive throne, draped in silk, surrounded by guards, his eyes full of arrogance. Moses stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "I'm a messenger from the Lord of the world. Let Bani Israel go. Stop oppressing them." The Pharaoh at that moment laughed. mocking, smug, completely unfazed. Aren't you the same Moses was raised here? The one who ran away after killing a man? He thought he had a power over Moses, thought he could shame him into silence. But Moses, he wasn't the same man anymore. He stood tall, answering with certainty, "Yes, I made a mistake and I fled, but Allah has guided me. He sent me back." Pharaoh's smile faded. This wasn't the scared boy he once knew. Then the Pharaoh leaned forward, his voice dropped, eyes narrowing. "If you really sent by God, prove it." Moses, he didn't hesitate. He threw his staff onto the ground, and right before their eyes, it transformed. Not into just any snake, but a massive, slithering serpent. It twisted, coiled, and moved like it was alive. The guards flinched, stepping back into fear. فألقى عصاه فإذا هي ثعبان مبين. So he threw down his staff, and suddenly it was a real snake. Then Moses placed his hand inside his cloak. When he pulled it out, it was shining, glowing like a beam of light. The entire court speechless. The Pharaoh's smugness gone. For the first time, fear crept into his eyes. But instead of surrendering, he did what arrogant tyrants do. He denied the truth, called Moses a magician. And he wasn't done yet. The Pharaoh refused to back down. He called his advisors, planned his next move. "Moses just a sorcerer. We will prove it. Bring me the best magicians in Egypt." And just like that, the stage was set. A public showdown. Moses versus the greatest magician in the land. The people of Egypt, they were hyped. They gathered in massive crowds, waiting for the battle. And Moses, he stood fearless, waiting. Because he knew this wasn't magic. It was truth. The day finally arrived. Thousands of people packed the open square. Pharaoh sat on his throne, smiling confidently. His magicians, the best Egypt had ever seen. They stepped forward, dressed in rich robes, full of pride. One of them sneered at Moses and said, "Will you go first or should we?" Moses nodded, letting them begin. They threw down their robes and staffs, and suddenly illusions filled the air. The ropes twisted, moved, looked like living snakes. The crowd gasped. It looked real. It felt real. Even Moses, for a moment, felt fear creep in. But then Allah reassured him. قُلْنَا لَا تَخَفْ إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْأَعْلَى. We said, "Do not fear, for you will be superior." And with that, Moses threw down his staff, and boom, it became a real living serpent. Not an illusion, not a trick. A true miracle from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The serpent raced across the ground. It devoured every single fake snake the magicians had created. The crowd silent. The Pharaoh frozen. What about the magicians? They stunned. They had spent their entire life mastering magic, but this was different. This wasn't magic. This was real. And right there in front of everyone, the magicians fell to their knees. They prostrated and cried out, "We believe in the Lord of Moses and Harun." And the Pharaoh, his face turned red with rage. He had just been humiliated in front of his entire kingdom. So what did he do? The same thing tyrants always do. He threatened them. Torture, death, unimaginable pain. But the magicians, they didn't care anymore. They had seen the truth, and they wouldn't deny it. His kingdom, his power, slipping away. So he did what all dictators do. He doubled down on his cruelty. He made life worse for Bani Israel. More oppression, more killing, more punishment. But Moses, he wasn't stopping either. He warned Pharaoh, "If you don't believe, a punishment will come." But Pharaoh, he laughed it off. Oh, he had no idea what was coming next. Moses had just shaken Egypt to its core. The magicians had bowed. The people had witnessed a miracle. And the Pharaoh, he was furious, humiliated, and more ruthless than ever. Instead of accepting the truth, he doubled down on oppression. More whips, more suffering, more death of Bani Israel. And Moses, he warned him, over and over again, "Let my people go, or Allah will send punishments." But the Pharaoh, he laughed. He thought he was untouchable. He thought nothing could break his kingdom. Oh, he had no idea what was coming. One by one, the punishments started falling. Each one a warning. Each one a chance for Pharaoh to repent. The Nile turned to blood. People went to drink and spat it out in horror. The entire river red as death. فأرسلنا عليهم الطوفان والجراد والقمل والضفادع والدم آيات مفصلات فاستكبروا وكانوا قوما مجرمين. So we sent upon them the flood, locusts, lice, frogs, and blood as distinct signs, but they remained arrogant and were wicked people. Then came the frogs, not a few, millions, crawling into beds, jumping into food, filling every street. Next, lice and locusts, eating the crops, biting every inch of their skins. Egypt was falling apart, and yet Pharaoh still refused. Then came the final blow, a night that shook Egypt to its core. Every firstborn Egyptian son died. Rich, poor, royal, slave, no one was spared. Pharaoh's own son was among the dead. That's when he finally cracked. That's when he screamed, "Fine, take your people and go." It was the dead of night. The streets of Egypt, silent, eerie, and tense. Moses moved quickly, urgently, but with complete certainty. Behind them, thousands of Israelites carrying everything they could. Mothers held their babies close, hearts pounding with fear. Fathers whispered, "Keep moving, don't stop, don't look back." They had been slaves for generations, beaten, tortured, broken, but tonight they were walking free. The air felt heavy, like the whole world was holding its breath. Step by step, mile by mile, they pushed forward into the unknown. Moses led them toward the Red Sea, a vast, endless body of water, stretching further than the eye could see. But then, a sound shattering the night, thunderous, earth shaking, heart stopping. It was Pharaoh's army. Chariots racing, horses galloping, spears glinting under the moonlight. Pharaoh had changed his mind. He wasn't letting them go without a fight. The Israelites saw the army charging behind them, and in front of them, a massive sea, impossible to cross. Panic spread like wildfire. People screamed. They said, "Moses, we are trapped. What have you done?" But Moses, he stood firm, eyes looked on the sea. He took a deep breath and said, "قال كلا إن معي ربي سيهدين." No, indeed my Lord is with me. He will guide me. Then Allah gave the command, "Strike the sea with your staff, Moses." Moses didn't hesitate. He raised his staff high, then brought it down. And in an instant, the impossible happened. فَفَلَقْنَا لَهُمُ الْبَحْرَ فَكَانَ كُلَّ فِرْقٍ كَالطَّوْدِ الْعَظِيمِ. So we parted the sea for them, and each side was like a towering mountain. The water ripped apart, splitting into two colossal walls. Between them, a dry path stretching all the way across. The wind howled, waves froze in place like walls of glass. The Israelites, stunned, speechless, frozen in fear. Then Moses called out, "Move! This is our way out!" Feet hit the sand. Children clutched their parents. Step by step, they crossed into the miracle. The walls of the water loomed on both sides. Fish swarmed behind walls of liquid sky. The air was thick with awe, silence, and hope. Every heartbeat felt like an eternity, but they kept walking, rushing toward freedom. The Pharaoh reached the shore. He saw the impossible path ahead. He should have stopped. He should have seen the signs. But arrogance, it blinds even the mightiest kings. With a furious cry, he shouted, "After them! Kill them all!" And just like that, the army charged into the sea. Chariots thundered, horses kicking up sand and mist. Swords gleamed, soldiers grinned, thinking they had won. They had no idea. They were walking straight into their doom. The last Israelite stepped onto dry land, and in that instant, Allah gave the final command. The water rushed back with a deafening roar. Walls of liquid came crashing down, and the Pharaoh's army swallowed whole. Chariots flipped, soldiers screamed, horses vanished into the depths. And the Pharaoh, he fought, he gasped, he struggled against the waves. At that moment, he finally understood. He had lost, drowning, shocking. He cried out, الآن وقد عصيت قبل وكنت من المفسدين. Now, when you had disobeyed before and were of the corruptors, but it was too late. His kingdom gone, his power destroyed, his name a lesson for all time. With one last breath, he disappeared beneath the waves. The sea was silent again, and on the other shore, Bani Israel stood in shock. They had witnessed the impossible. They had seen the might of Allah firsthand. Moses turned, gazing at the sea. The oppressor was gone. The chains were broken. They were free. Tears streamed down faces. Some fell to their knees, whispering prayers of gratitude. Others stared at Moses, realizing who he truly was, prophet, a leader. But the journey, it wasn't over yet. Ahead of them, a vast desert, a land of trials, tests, and lessons yet to come. Moses knew this was just the beginning. Bani Israel had escaped Egypt, but would they escape their own weaknesses? Only time would tell. What happens next? What did Bani Israel do after escaping Egypt? How did they handle their newfound freedom? And what new trials awaited them in the desert? This story, it's far from over. Stay tuned because the next chapter is just as intense. Anyway, you can click on that video where I can tell you another story of another prophet. Until next time, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum.